gentlemen, welcome to the Mission Employable podcast. My name is Ben Oldach, on the road with Kathy Leggett here today. We are in a conference room this time, or actually, no, it's just an office, not inside a gym. You're not sitting on a treadmill, which is the last time we were out on the road in Lamar's in a fire department training gym.
Yes,
so a little bit different here. Just to let you guys know that, again, we're on the road, so if the audio quality is a little bit different, we're not in our home studio, but we're going to try to make it as best as we can. We are out here in Denison. We're at the Crawford County Memorial Hospital, and we're here with Dana Neemann. She's the Director of Education and Patient Experience here, as well as Macy Webb, Director of Human Resources, and we're going to start talking about their internship program. Kathy, I know you've been excited to get out here.
I have.
Why is that?
I've had the good fortune to connect with Dana previously on some, projects and just information. And then I made a visit here to the hospital earlier this year and got to learn more about the internship program and the scrubs camp that they do, which we'll tackle in another episode. And healthcare being such a high demand occupation everywhere, they really have some great things going on and have seen some super successes. So I'm happy, I'm excited to showcase it and to let Dana and Macy share the things that they have been doing, the success they've had and how they've done it, so others can consider the same things.
So welcome, Dana and Macy.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Nice to be here.
So Dana, why don't we start with you and also so people can get an idea of who's talking. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your role here at Crawford County Memorial Hospital?
So I am a nurse by trade, and I went the non-traditional student route. And so I became a CNA while I was still in high school. And then I thought I was going to go off to a 4-year school, realized that's not really where my passion was. And I decided to go back to the community college, and I got my LPN at WIT here in Denison. So I went through the diploma program, got married, had a couple of kids, bought a house, the typical non-traditional student route. Decided I wanted to go back for my RN. And so I went to an associate's program, graduated with that. My husband and I, did some traveling. I worked at a lot of different areas. And then I did my online bachelor's program. So the reason that piece of my life is so important is because I really very much recognize the non-traditional routes in order to get to your end goal in your careers. And so, like I said, I'm a nurse by trade. I have been employed at CCMH for a little over 10 years now. I've been in healthcare since I was 17. I became a CNA at 17, an LPN at 21, an RN at 25. So, it has been a minute. But I have been in my Director of Education role for about 8 years. And back in 13, 15, I had read an article where they were talking about not only the nursing shortage, but how are you going to get people into understanding these non-traditional routes. And so it didn't really resonate with me until I took on the Director of Education role. And so I have been blessed to work with a number of frontline staff, managers, leaders, executives along my career that have really helped open up my eyes to a lot of different opportunities. And we really just wanted to share that with our community.
Yeah. And then Macy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm our Director of Human Resources. I've been here for about 4 years. I mostly manage our staffing from an employee standpoint, but I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, Dana came to me and she said that we have identified a lot of big gaps in our workforce and we need to have some plans to, have some students or some new grads that are coming in on a consistent basis. So that's kind of how the internship came about.
So tell us a little bit about the internship program.
So, like we've been chatting about, Kathy and I have chatted and Macy and I have chatted, that, we really had a handle on students when they were with us in high school capacity through work-based learning, career exploration, just general observation hours. And then also we're a clinical site for a number of colleges and universities, but we identified a need to really try to hook these young men and women and individuals at kind of that gap area. And how are we really looking at not only recruiting back to the area when they're done with the program, but also how are we going to really sell our organization and our professions? And so, because a lot of times when people go into, nursing programs, radiology, lab, all of those things, rehab services, they want to go to like the biggest and the greatest. greatest, but they kind of discount sometimes those critical access hospitals or those rural organizations that really have a lot to offer.
Right. I feel like, I mean, we were chatting about this earlier. Dana does a good job with Scrubs Camp, and I'm sure you guys will talk about that later on a different episode. But she does a good job with Scrubs Camp, in, I believe, starting in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So middle school, we get the hook in these kids, and they're able to come in and see how awesome healthcare is. And then high school, Dana said we have the career exploration. They're able to come in here and kind of see what everything's about. And then we were losing them. They went off to college, and they were going to the big hospitals where they were going to their programs, and then they weren't coming back. So it's nice to have the couple really engaged students that we'd really like to have as employees. We have kind of our eyes and ears on them the entire time.
So when we first rolled out this intern program, not only did we have a number of travelers in our building, and we had a lot of data, we'll come back to that, but we also, one of our big selling points when we presented this to a couple of key executive team members that really helped mentor and guide us through this was, what's going to be our return on investment in this? So not only are we looking at, like Macy said, trying to keep them back, but how are we going to keep our hooks in them? And so one of the aspects of the intern program is we work on a lot of technical skills, but we also work on a lot of professional development. And we also then, after we go through and they do a graduation, we allow them to use us as references for further education, employment, things along those lines. They get actually like a little certificate and celebration. We do it like an actual graduation, do a little press release and stuff, but then we maintain contact with these students. And so we actually, last week, one of our interns was in town and she was home for a couple of weeks. She is living full-time right now in Iowa City. She is getting ready to apply for her doctoral program for physical therapy school. She's finishing up her undergrad, and she's like, you know what, I'm in the area. I wanted to come by. I wanted to see how you're doing. So we send them like a Christmas card, text message, hey, good luck on your finals. And so there's that personal connection with them. And it's Macy and I. So it doesn't fall to one person. But so that was really one of the selling points on kind of like what our overall point of that intern program.
And that's really interesting to me because you're one of the few people that I feel like we've talked to that's really made it a point to like keep that contact. Mm-hmm. And not only does that, allow you to check in and see where they are and what their job prospects look like, but that also has to make them feel super valued. That when you have an employer that values you, and you're more apt to want to come and work for them.
Absolutely. So my family and I took a vacation over Christmas. And so I got two or three different pictures of former interns standing in front of my office door and we stopped by to see you,
yes.
And then, also Macy and I are hometown girls. Like, we are from this community. And so, I was a transplant this summer before my 5th grade year, but this is my home. And so we recognize the value of those connections. And one piece that I do want to touch on, and I know Macy has the stats on that, is when we talked about the traveler costs when we were looking at this. And, because I know funding a program, thinking about how you're going to fund a program is very overwhelming and daunting, especially if you aren't the budget person and you have to go sell it to an accountant, right? And I'm a nurse by trade, so I don't sell things to accountants very well, except for I need it for safety.
Yes.
And so Macy was able to pull the stats on that.
Yeah, our average traveler spend, and I'm sure it's the same at healthcare facilities kind of across the state. And right now we're even going through a hard time, but a year ago or 2 years ago, we were really struggling. And when you bring all that data compiled in 6 months time, and it gets spendy.
Yeah. So at that time we had several nursing travelers. We had traveler paramedic. We had a couple of radiology travelers, and that did not count our foreign-based workers. Mm-hmm. And so with that wage, and so we compiled it, and I know it's kind of a staggering number, but this is not anything that is a secret in healthcare. But we had spent almost $1 million just in traveler expenses, in a 6-month time frame. Mm-hmm. And so when we looked at that and we calculated out the cost of wages, the cost of materials, some of the extra things that we wanted to do for the interns and stuff like that, we were looking at $25,000. Mm-hmm. And so $25,000 is literally a tiny drop in a bucket of $1 million. Right. And so once we became comfortable with that information, obviously it wasn't a surprise to our executive team by any way, shape, or form, but having a better understanding of that really opened up the conversation of, well, why can't we go forward? So when you're looking at starting a program, and that was definitely a learning opportunity for me, and I think for you as well, is that, you always think about cost, but really you have to look at what's your return on investment. So we know the other piece of it is, and we actually have this conversation often, we have to remind ourselves this is not a short-term return on investment. This is a long-term return on investment. And so if you're looking to stop your bleed and you're looking to stop your gap, that's a traveler's perspective there, right? You're going to stop your bleed for a minute till you can get these people through. But this is a long-term investment. And so when we are a critical access hospital, we're a community organization. We want to put into our community, we want to put into our men and women that are here. This is a great way to do that and to support them because like you had said, we maintain that personal connection. And our motto is we care for life. Well, how, that means different things to a lot of different people. And so that's really been a lot of our focus on it.
I don't want to assume anything, but when I think of like a rural hospital and like you said, like a very like community focused one, I feel like you're either going to have people that stay here for a little bit and then move on to a bigger city or people who stay here for like 40 years.
Absolutely. And I will tell you some of that's a generational trend too. And, so gone are the days, and statistically speaking, nationally, whether it be urban or rural areas, gone are the days where people are going to stay at a job for 40 years. It's not going to happen, especially in the nursing profession. I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, but I want to say, what was it? You would be lucky to keep them 5 years.
I think
3?
now they're saying 2 or 3.
Okay, 2 or 3 years. But organically, if you have your homegrown interns, they are kind of your brand ambassadors. So there was a report, I want to say, out on Glassdoor, and then another, I can't think of it right now, another scholarly site that really stated that 90% of your interns will actually come back to you if they've done an intern program at your organization, because they're already learning the culture. They're already learning some of the facility organization. They're learning, what's expected, what's not. And when you think about going out into your big boy, big girl world, or you're going out into this new job or this new profession, that's really overwhelming. So another thing that we really, really focused on was our professional development pieces. And Macy did an outstanding job. I'm gonna let her speak a little bit on the human resources aspects.
Yes. So when you're talking about hiring these folks, obviously one of my biggest things is making sure that they know how to communicate with each other once they get in the door, because they're not getting taught these soft skills.
Yeah, and let me just interrupt because I'm really glad we're going to talk about that. But it is one of the things I really wanted to have you guys speak to, because I know this is part of your program, and which I think is critically important. And just to point out from, again, the thing that everybody knows, but how do we address it, is soft skills or employability skills, those transferable skills, those things that we know people need to have to be successful in their career, are on the top of every employer's list of what they need, but they aren't finding in many of their applicants. So you have taken that, kind of upon yourself as part of this, which again is I think just really important, and really just adds to the comprehensiveness of this program. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to connect that because it is critically important. So,
and I would agree. It's currently what we're going to do for our 2025 interns are, I believe we are going to have 4 or 5 professional development days throughout their 8 weeks. And those are where we have the lessons of the soft skills. So we'll discuss we'll discuss emotional intelligence. So we go over emotional intelligence 2.0. I mean, that is probably number 1 on the list of what employers are looking for. We talk about human resources. How do you compare benefits packages? How do you compare rates? I mean, showing these kids that we care about them as people, not just employees. And even we've discussed having people come in and talk about loans and how loans work, and just the things that they're not getting taught in high school or their professional careers. And usually those are half days for Dana and I. And even Dana does some things with education and getting them certified for like BLS and things like that.
So we own their certification for basic life support. We also work with them to get the mandatory reporter in the state of Iowa for dependent adult and child. We also put them through a telemetry course. And so then that way they understand the association of the mechanical and the electrical components of the heart and how to read basic telemetry. And then another piece is that we do on-the-job training for phlebotomy. And so each of the interns get an opportunity to, no matter what department they're in, they get an opportunity to learn that skill, because that is a skill that you can be taught on the job, and that is transferable into a potential, work or
Full-time
job. Even if they get into their programs and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this is not for me, they still have something to fall back on.
Yeah, and I want to hit on that because I think these skills, especially these high demand skills, are so important, and the opportunity for young individuals or anybody to get them, maybe, as you say, that's not going to be their full-time career, but life, as we say, happens. And I feel so strongly about that sometimes something happens in school and it doesn't work out. And then then they maybe loans are due. And this is a high demand job. You can get phlebotomy. And so to have something, as you said, to fall back on and or to supplement while you're going to school, to do, and it's in the field that you may be going into, healthcare. I mean, I just think there's so much value to all of those pieces that you provide.
We also go so far as, so every summer we have our foundation golf tournament, and so the interns are required to participate in that. And so here's kind of my thought process, is that volunteering is a thing of the past. It is a lost art form. And so the interns have the opportunity to not only network and see how important these particular activities are, but they also understand, why there's value and why it is important to go out and be in a service mindset and things like that. And so, because even internally, you always look for volunteers to do something. They're like, well, I don't know, and that's a cultural change, and so we really put a lot of emphasis on, those professional development things to be thinking of. It might not mean anything to you today, but down the road, when you say and you put on your job application, or you put on your college application or your doctoral application, look, I was a nursing intern, or I was a radiology intern, or I was a rehab services intern, and I've done all of these things, and look, I now have all of these, pieces of papers and certifications, as well as these references. And so that was really important.
Yeah. And on that piece, I do want to, because you just spoke to it, but maybe a little bit more, what occupations are part of your internship program?
So,
and how does,
okay. Do you want to go to that one?
Sure, yeah. We have one in radiology. We have one in rehab services, which generally is either a physical therapist or occupational therapist, or students wanting to go into those two areas. We have 4 nursing interns and 1 facilities management intern, so generally like plant operations or HVAC.
So great.
So we identified those areas were definitely high need. And so as we grow the program, we have, our first year was very successful, but we recapped at the end, because I think that that's another really important piece, is you have to sit down, and we had our interns be very candid with us. What worked well? What didn't? What did you obtain from this program? What do you wish would have been different? And we very much explained to them, we can't get better without feedback. And so even if it's, oh, I didn't like this, that's still an opportunity, right? And so we identified that those were our main areas. Going forward, we definitely plan to expand it to, your medical lab technician, as well as probably the CMA.
Great.
route.
So so I just want to recap a few things and then have an additional question. So we talked about it being an 8-week program, so you keep it less than that 780 hours. Their temporary employee status, that's how you hire them. One thing I wanted to hit on is the management of confidentiality, insurance, and legal aspects. So we were discussing for the internship program, the minimum age is 18, correct? Yes. And so talk a little bit about that, but also then if you can share, just again, paint out, you have middle school, you have the scrubs, so that there's something to keep them engaged learning and, to get them to that point. So yeah, but talk a little bit about that, because that's always a concern and a thought process that anybody's going through with an internship program.
Yeah, so from a confidentiality standpoint, when we were first starting this program, we really spoke to our quality officer who had the main risk management concerns, as they always will. And she expressed how difficult it is, especially with HIPAA, how you can't really have kids under 18 in the facility having direct patient care or doing direct patient care duties. So we did set the 18-year-old requirement because then it's, if they're under 18, do their parents have to be required to sign a HIPAA acknowledgement? When all these kids are onboarded, we go through a pretty intense orientation process where our chief quality officer comes and discusses, the importance of HIPAA and confidentiality with these patients, because it's extremely important in our community. I mean, being a small, rural, tight-knit community, I mean, you might care for your neighbor, your friend's grandma, and you have to make sure that your lips are sealed and you would operate just as any other employee would in the building.
The other thing that we focus on is that because we have had a successful program with career exploration and work-based learning, and so that's where they fall underneath like this healthcare learnings opportunity. And so we developed a policy on that several years ago, and we were able to show the statistics and show that the outcome, we didn't have any increased risk. There were certain areas the students were not allowed to go to. You know, obviously when we still had OB services, they weren't allowed there. They aren't allowed in surgery. Well, that's another way to kind of hook them, though, into the intern program, is because now they're paid employees. And so now they're ours, and we can put them in the surgical rotations. We do not allow students, unless they are associated with an official program, to go into our medical clinics. Because, again, there's just a lot of confidentiality opportunities there. And so from a quality risk management standpoint, that's kind of one of our solid lines. But we do put them in the emergency department. We school our staff as well, and we work very, very candidly with our employees and our frontline staff. Like, hey, if you're identifying that this maybe isn't a good fit or there's a concern, all students in the building report to me. I'm the director of education. And so I also help be the gatekeeper, so that way the manager of that department isn't managing another set of, employees or another layer along those lines. And so that's been, sometimes it's been put to test and challenged, and sometimes it's just been really great, because if there is a concern, the intern then comes to me. And so I manage them and I help guide them. And I, just like any other employer, a leader position would be. And then we work together. And then if the manager comes to me and says, hey, my staff is struggling with understanding the why, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? We do. And I do remember last year, we had a couple of situations in our emergency department where two of our nursing interns were, and they were very intense, as the emergency world is. I was a trauma nurse for 12 years. Like, that's my bread and butter. I love ER. That's my first love of nursing. Education's my second. So I speak that world. So I was able to sit down with the students and just be like, okay, let's talk about this. And that also fills into some of those, or feeds into some of those soft skills with like crucial conversations. We go over just culture and stuff like that. And so we're slowly trying to change the healthcare culture, literally one intern at a time.
And another comment, I guess, is I don't want to use the phrase we beat the HIPAA thing into their brains, but when we have a hook in these kids so young, we're able to start those conversations early. I mean, as early as middle school and Scrubs camp. I mean, if you continuously hear it from the time you're like 13, it helps a lot, because by the time that they get here for the intern program, they're kind of like, okay, this isn't the first time I've heard this.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you kind of about your past experience as a nurse with some of your mentors and how important it is for these interns to be matched up with people in the field who have been doing this for, 15, 20 years, and how that improves their quality of an internship.
Okay, I'm going to get a little emotional on this one. So I had so many great people come along in my career, and so many more than I could name. And they had positive and negative experiences on me. But with that, I was able to learn and grow. But I would say probably my best mentors and leaders and peers were the ones that were willing to say, you know what, you're not alone. we were all students once. And I think that that's one of the biggest messages and that's something that we have been working internally inside our organization since 2017 is like, we have to remember we were all students once. With that said, just having that person that you look at with such respect and admiration and awe, be able to say, I'm going to take you under my wing and I'm going to show you. And I might not show you exactly textbook. I know all of the nursing schools are cringing right now, but I'm going to show you how we're going to go through and how we're going to survive and how we're actually going to function. And you know what? Someone's worst day, you might be there to help them. And so when you go into healthcare, you quickly realize, and actually I'm going to quote one of our interns from last year, you quickly realize you're so much more than a healthcare provider. You are there for that patient. You are there for that family. One of our interns, our rehab service intern from last year, she said she quickly recognized that you're more than a physical therapist. You are that person's cheerleader. You are that person's advocate. And that is because she was able to be in a department that knows A, how to be a perfectionist, B, how to get results, but C, to understand we're in the business of caring for humans. And so when we have mentors and then we can take and pass that on to the next generation of nurses or even to each other, it just becomes more of a collaborative environment. And that's really what we're aiming at. So I think that our frontline staff have also, everybody has growing pains, but they've really begun to embrace it in more and more departments because they realize, you know what, it's okay. I do remember that it was okay to learn. And I do remember it's okay to have successes and have opportunities.
And if you make sure that you tell staff, this is going to be a long-term thing. When you see in 3 or 4 or 5 years that these students are going to be working beside you and you already know how they work and know how they communicate, that it's going to help you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you might be relying on them.
Right.
At some point.
I have one final question, which is what advice would you have for other hospitals or employers looking to develop an early talent pipeline and who might be considering, these type of strategies? I'm sure there's many things, but is there, one thing in particular, and from both of your perspectives as, your role, Dana, in education and patient experience, director of that, and from the human resources perspective?
I'll go first. I'll go first. So I think there has to be somebody that's willing to take on this program. There has to be one person that's willing to champion and identify that there's a problem. There's either if it's a staffing problem or just a pipeline of young kids. There's a lack of people coming in. So somebody has to kind of take the initiative and take the steps. I know Dana and I, it was a lot of work when we first started it, but after that first year, it gets a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
After the first years, the frame was built. Mm-hmm. Now it's just we're putting the furniture in. It's basically runs itself. And once you get the buy-in from your executive team, and we're at a good spot where everybody's bought in, everybody knows that this program is a great thing, not only for CCMH, but for our kids, that it's really just amazing from both perspectives.
And I would say that prior to jumping into an intern program, because we did have some framework in place where we did understand, kind of what the needs of the community were, as well as we had really good connections. And so if you have a director of education in your facility, really not only are they there to help maintain certifications and education for your staff, but how are they doing community outreach? How is that? Is it a department? Is it a person? We're small enough. I'm a department of 1. I have force multipliers, but I'm a department of 1. But it really comes down to, do you have a footprint inside your local community schools? Do you have partnerships with the right people, with the business liaisons, with the work-based learning coordinators, your career exploration? Are you working with your local community colleges or even your major universities? That's really where I would say it starts, is because you're trying to get the narrative out there. Hey, come check us out. We also, even before we officially started Scrubs Camp, we were in the daycares. we had daycare and preschool tours. And so we also have a program in Denison Community Schools called Community Partners. And we have some of our nurse practitioners are part of the business partners. Sorry, I'm mincing my words there. But they go out into the schools and they meet with the kids. And the schools will reach out to me and say, hey, we have this program going on. Do you have any resources? Do you have any ideas? And so I think that that's kind of really where it starts, is on a community base. Then we built Scrubs Camp, and then we, career exploration had always been there, but Karen Kennedy is retiring this year. I'm sad to see her go, but she left a great legacy, and I know that people that are taking it on are also going to do great. But between her and I, we were able to really grow that program and get our hooks in these kids. And then, like Macy said, you have to have collaboration. And I really, truly believe that your education department, your human resources department are your two biggest spearheaders.
I would say it's really helpful to have a viewpoint that's clinical and a viewpoint that's not clinical. Because Dana came in, I think we should give these kids BLS. I think we should do telemetry. And then I come in and say, I think they really need to know benefits packages. So it's kind of, you get the best of both worlds.
It is. Yeah.
Well, Dana, Macy, thank you so much for talking to us about this internship program. I think not only is this a really, useful program here, but I feel like you gave so much information that could help people in other industries, not even related to healthcare.
Absolutely.
Yes. Whether that's how you show value to these interns, whether it's the mentorship aspect, whether it's the navigating the restrictions of a particular industry for people who are younger. I think a lot of people got a lot of good information out of this episode, and I just want to thank you guys for sitting down with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. This is incredible. And just I don't want to overspeak, so we can cut this out if you don't want. But Dana, you've been so willing to share. You guys have done so much that if there is somebody who's really has a burning question or something based on what they've heard, is there a possibility that they could reach out to you to follow up?
Absolutely. This is not a proprietary thing. This is an industry thing. Yes. And so, and actually we have partnered with other community hospitals that have taken our blueprint and have said, okay, we're going to tweak it for ourselves. So if anybody is interested, I can be reached directly at the hospital. You can call Crawford County Memorial Hospital. My direct number is 712-265-2795. I will tell you, I'm not always in my office, clearly. So you can also email me at dneemann@ccmhia.com, or you can also go out to our website at ccmhia.com. Click on the About tab over there on the far right, Community Education and Outreach, and there's a little form that you can fill out and send some standard questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you both so much.